Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's exciting edition of Victory Never Sleeps. Um, we are going to wait a little bit. We're hopefully Witten's Fawn is joining me this evening, and when he does, we're going to go over the Reginsmál. It's the next in the series of Volsunga-oriented poems in the Edda that we're going through. Might as well mention it off the top. We are reading directly from voluspow.org. That's Nick posted a link. If you go there, there's cool stuff. It's where we've been doing almost all of our lore readings from. So if you want to follow along exactly, we're doing it there. You can feel free to read from whatever translation you might have handy or whatever you'd like to. But that's where we're going to be working from. It's kind of a short one tonight, so we can afford to give Spawn a few minutes here to get sorted. Top of the show things. So I update you every week on how we're doing on Phrasehoff. And matter of fact, we're going to have Witten Clifford Erickson and his lovely wife, Githia Katie Erickson, on next week to talk to you guys about how all that's going, what that's going to mean when it happens, other Hoff-related and future as relates to Hoff things. So it should be a good show, a fun show, and a timely show next week. But so far, I talk to you guys every week. I ask you guys to help out, and you guys always answer. You guys are amazing and extremely generous. We're trying to raise money for the down payment of Phrasehoff. We are currently up to $4,530 towards that, and that's thanks to y'all's generosity. So it is very much appreciated. You guys are amazing. So we've looked at I believe 4 properties now, just scouring things. We've got a good line of funding as far as loan stuff figured out for it. So we are making progress, and we're very excited about getting that hopefully very soon. So thank you guys for all your generosity, not just on this, but throughout the years. You guys have been amazing, and it enables us to do some really special things together. Coming up very quickly, it's about a week and 2 days from now, we have Sigerbloat at Sigerheim. That's in Jackson County, Tennessee. If you can make it there, it's going to be hot, but it's going to be fantastic. It is a beautiful, beautiful property. It's going to eventually be the home of Tiershoff and the home of the AFA Capital. We've got big plans for it in the coming years. It's a very special, very powerful place. And I am looking forward to seeing you all there. We're getting really good attendance numbers as far as pre-sales on tickets. So it looks like it's going to be a really nice event. I'm very excited for the awesome people we have showing up. Nick and I have been working on a history presentation on a slideshow deal for you guys. So hopefully that will turn out good. If not, it will certainly turn out entertaining. So I'm looking forward to that. As mentioned, producer Nick will be there, and our absent co-host, Svan, will also be there. We would all love to see you guys. We've got some folks coming in from surrounding states. It's going to be a really nice time. If you can make it, we'd love to see you there. Following month, at beautiful Baldershoff in Murdoch, Minnesota, we have Freyfaxi. That's the big yearly event at Baldershoff. It's going to be amazing. It always is. I'm very excited to see everyone there. It's going to be awesome. A number of us will be there. And if you can make it, you absolutely should. I think that's all. Oh, also, top of the show, thanks. We are now accepting enrollment for the 2025-2026 school year. Got K through 7 already. So if you have children that you would like to enroll in the Asatru Academy, now is the time. children between kindergarten all the way up through 7th grade this year. So our folks working with the Academy under the direction of Dean Gothi Rob Stam are doing amazing work. They're getting them set up to where we have we are set up to where, at least for United States citizens, but also in, I think in a couple of provinces in Canada, we have a legitimate homeschooling program that is acceptable to the standard of your states, that can hold parents' hands and help them navigate homeschooling your children. In this day and age, that is extremely important, to take back that ability to teach your children the values that you want them to have while protecting them against a lot of very damaging things in the world around us. So, make the choices you're going to make with your children on their schooling, but know that this is an option. Know that you don't have to put your children in public school. There is ways to homeschool them, and we are here to help through that process. I'm very excited about it. This fall, Aubrey will be enrolling, and I will be, instructing her through that. So I am looking forward to it. Not just as the Allsherjargoði, but also as a dad with a daughter that's going to start being a part of that program this fall. So very much looking forward to that. Let's see where we are at. And Nick, could you see on the side if you can reach out and see maybe what the ETA
I've texted it. Yeah.
All right. Cool. So, also of note, as always, GW Farnsworth, our amazing pillar of generosity, has donated $25 towards our Freyshoff efforts and $25 to the Victory Never Sleeps Fund. So thank you, as always. It's very, very much appreciated. Also should mention, large part of our program, a lot of our front-loaded portion of today's program, until we get my co-host in, is going to be question and answer stuff. So please, ask things about anything you might want. We promise we will answer your questions on the program. Or if we miss them or they come in late at the end or whatever, we'll get to them in the next program. Also, at any time, if you're interested, vns@runestone.org. Email your questions there, and we will answer them on the next program. And we already have a number of you that do that. So do that. Also, while we're on the killing a little bit of time at the beginning of the program, it's worth mentioning. Like, share, subscribe. Wherever you are consuming this, if you're watching it live, if you're watching it later, or if you're listening to it as a podcast, wherever you're finding it, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, tell people you might know. You're all part of different groups and things on social media out there. Get the word out for other people to check it out. Word of mouth is our most powerful tool to get our message and our existence in front of the eyes of more of our folk that need to come home. So please feel free to do that. Also, thank you to the folks at Countercurrents who had myself and our law speaker on about a week and a half ago to do an interview there. That was very nice. Always enjoy talking to that audience. Appreciate that. And I should mention, coming up in a week and a day, I will be being interviewed on No More News. So looking forward to that as well. Always appreciate opportunities to get our existence and our message out in front of more people that need to be coming home. The biggest hurdle to our growth at this stage is that there's a lot of people that simply don't know we exist. The sky is the limit. We've got a huge room for growth. There are a ton of our folk that need to come home to our gods and our faith, our Asatru folk assembly. The thing holding the biggest majority of that back is simply not knowing that we exist. So the more we get the word out, and because we are who we are and we stand for what we stand for, it's harder for us on certain platforms. So anything you can do there helps us out. All right. So I do not have any idea what situation is with Svan. Hopefully he joins us. If not, I can go ahead and get us started into the meat of this. Yeah, let me see where we are at. All right. Sorry, guys. I am spinning plates here by myself. Not used to it, so I know I'm killing a little bit of air. But I appreciate you guys bearing with us here. And like I said, hopefully Svan will join us in a bit. But if everybody wants to follow along, once again, velusbau.org, and we are going to be reading the Reginsmál tonight. And all of these pieces that we're reading in this section, again, they add depth and additional material to the Volsunga saga that we did, I think, like a 7-part breakdown of. So keep in mind going into it, this is a very old tale by the time of the Eddas getting compiled. The events of this would have taken place like roughly 800 years earlier, 750 years earlier. So this survived for a very long time in an oral format amongst our ancestors. It also was copied down across Northern Europe and Western Europe in a number of different ways. There are undoubtedly tons of bits and bobs of this that we do not currently have access to that were floating around at the time. Everything doesn't match up perfectly, but the more different source material we read about the subject, the more we get a deeper, more fleshed out understanding of the Volsunga cycle as a thing. All right. Question before we get started. Do we have anything like pamphlets we can drop places? Funny you should mention that. Short answer is no. But the bigger answer is, yeah, something that we've been working on. It's a project that stalled out a little bit that we were working on. Whit and Brandy and myself have been working on it, figuring out the right figuring out the right format and like what information we need on the pamphlet has always been kind of a curiosity. One of the interesting things, and this is a good problem to have, but it's a really interesting one. We need pamphlets for each of our hofs, and we can model those after, local church pamphlets. But for the bigger deal and for most of the area that we'd be putting pamphlets or handing them out, we need a generic AFA one. We run into something different because our faith is dissimilar to any other. It's dissimilar to any other church, any other religious body out there. It's strange because numerically, it's as numeric as several small local church or good sized local churches. But in scope, our practice is along the lines of, the Mormons or the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Catholics, to where we have, we have membership in 12 different countries. So figuring out the best way to let people know who we are, what we're about, and drive them to the site, figuring out the right verbiage and the right imagery for that is something we are working on. We know you guys want that. I appreciate you wanting to pass those out, and we will definitely try to get some of that ironed out. Matter of fact, I will talk to Brandy about that tomorrow. Okay, so no Svan tonight. He got his weeks mixed up. Wondering what we can do for replacement stuff or not. I don't know. I don't think we have anybody queued up, but if any of our Gothar want to call in and step up and join on here, you guys are welcome to join me this evening. If not, I will just take us through the Reginsmál. And I think I'll go ahead and get started with it. Sigurd went to Hjálprecht's stud and chose for himself a horse, who thereafter was called Grani. At that time, Regin, the son of Hreithmar, was come to Hjálprecht's home. He was more ingenious than all other men and a dwarf in stature. He was wise, fierce, and skilled in magic. Regin undertook Sigurd's bringing up and teaching and loved him much. He told Sigurd of his forefathers, and also of this, that once Odin and Honir and Loki had come to Andvari's waterfall. And in the fall were many fish. Andvari was a dwarf who had dwelt long in the waterfall in the shape of a pike, and there he got his food. Otter was the name of a brother of ours, said Regin, who often went into the fall in the shape of an otter. He had caught a salmon and sat on the high bank eating it with his eyes shut. Loki threw a stone at him and killed him. The gods thought they had grit. All right, I think there's a typo. Gods thought they had great good luck and stripped the skin of the otter. That same evening, they sought a night's lodging at Hreithmar's house and showed their booty. Then we seized them and told them as ransom for their lives to fill the otter skin with gold and completely cover it outside as well with red gold. And then they sent Loki to get the gold. He went to Raun and got her net, and then went to Andvari's fall and cast the net in front of the pike. And as the pike leaped in the net, then Loki said, "What is the fish that runs in the flood, and itself from ill cannot save? If thy head thou wouldst from hell redeem, find me the water's flame." Andvari spoke, "Andvari am I, and Owen my father. In many a fall have I fared. An evil Norn in olden days doomed me in waters to dwell." Loki spake, "Andvari, say, if thou seekest still to live in the land of men, what payment is set for the sons of men who war with lying words?" Andvari spake, "A mighty payment the man must make who in Valfgelmir's waters wade. On the long road lead the lying words that one to another utters." Loki saw all the gold that Andvari had, but when he had brought forth all the gold, he held back one ring, and Loki took this from him. The dwarf went into the rocky hole and said, "Now shall the gold that Gus once had bring their death to brothers twain, and evil be for heroes 8. Joy of my wealth shall no man win." Working on it. Took me a second to load there. The gods gave Hreithmar the gold and filled up the otter skin and stood it on its feet. Then the gods had to heap up gold and hide it. And when that was done, Hreithmar came forward and saw a single whisker and bade them to cover it. Then Odin brought out the ring and Varanot and covered the hair. And then Loki said, "The gold is given, and great the price. Thou hast my head to save. But fortune thy sons shall find not there. The bane of ye both it is." Hreithmar spake, "Gifts ye gave, but ye gave not kindly, gave not with hearts that were whole. Your lives ere this should ye all have lost, if sooner this fate I had seen." Loki spake, "Worse is this, that methinks I see. For a maid shall kinsmen clash, heroes unborn thereby shall be, I deem, to hatred doomed." Hreithmar spake, "The gold so red shall I rule methinks, so long as I shall live. Not of fear for thy threats I feel. So get ye hence to your homes." Fafnir and Rain asked Hreithmar for a share of the wealth that was paid for the slaying of their brother, Otter. This he refused, and Fafnir thrust his sword through the body of his father, Hreithmar, while he was sleeping. Hreithmar called to his daughters, Lingheith and Lothenheith, "Fled is my life, and mighty now is my need." Lingheith spake, "Though a sister loses her father, seldom revenge on her brother she brings." A couple of things while we're at this point to kind of reiterate. There is a complex web of things and a certain butterfly effect that happens. If we're not cautious through life, you stumble into bigger situations by being casual and unthinking with silly things you do. The gods are out walking, and Loki decides, "Oh, I'm going to chuck this rock at this otter," not knowing where he's at, not taking time to think. It seems like a thoughtless act, but it literally puts his life at stake, and it forces them to get in a rough and unfortunate situation that they need to find a way out of. And Loki's dealings with any of these strangers that they meet is particularly hostile and sets about a very painful set of events that we see throughout this story, throughout this sequence of stories. The other thing to think about that we're coming up to right now is the strange interlocking obligations as far as your bonds of duty to kin. We have sons slaying their father, and then their father asking his daughter, their sister, to avenge him, and creating an impossible circumstance. And I think that the depth of this is often ill understood by folks. Very often, for a long time, and I certainly heard this early on when I was involved in Asatru, there is this inviolable, kinslaying is the ultimate evil. There's this supreme loyalty to kin under any circumstance, but it doesn't take into account when there's kin on kin bad action, and then you have conflicting obligations. And I think in a lot of ways, this speaks to some bigger pictures in Asatru. We live in a very complex world. Our religion recognizes complexity and that sometimes there are just bad options, and there is an art and a wisdom to navigating your way through the most honorable or the best possible way of playing hands that you're dealt. We believe very much in Orlaw, or in, the hand that you're dealt. You come into this world with a complex matrix of luck and of destiny and of, past deeds of your kin that you can either be benefiting from or hampered by. And we all come into the world with a certain hand to play. There is a art in playing that hand. In other faiths, it's like you cash in and just hope for the best and let Jesus take the wheel. In our faith, very much you're expected to play the hand that you're dealt and to make the most out of your opportunities in life and to craft victory from that to the best of your ability. And that's often very complex when you have to choose, do I kill my brothers or do I avenge my father? Do I not avenge my father if it means killing my brothers, or do I go ahead and become a kinslayer but fulfill my obligation to my father? And there's not always the perfect answer. Things in life are very difficult and very challenging. The art of nobility is taking the responsibility upon yourself to make the hard choices, to live with their outcomes, and to be bold in facing situations to where the path is not clear, to where things are foggy, and you have to choose the best with the information you have. And it's not as appealing for mass consumption because it requires a certain amount of work, but it is honest, and it is ennobling if you embrace those challenges, even if it's difficult. So to continue, Hreithmar spake, a daughter, woman with wolf's heart bear, if thou hast no son with the hero brave, if one weds the maid, for the need is mighty, their son for thy hurt may vengeance seek. Then Hreithmar died, and Fafnir took all the gold. Thereupon Rayan asked to have his inheritance from his father, but Fafnir refused this. Then Rayan asked counsel of Lingaith, his sister, how he should win his inheritance. And she said, in friendly wise, the wealth shalt thou ask of thy brother, and better will. Not seemly is it to seek with the sword Fafnir's treasure to take. All these happenings did Rayan tell to Sigurd. One day, when he came to Rayan's house, he was gladly welcome. Rayan said, hither the son of Sigmund is come, the hero eager. Here to our hall. His courage is more than an ancient man's, and battle I hope from thy hardy wolf. Here shall I foster the fearless prince. Now Yngvi's heir to us is come, the noblest hero beneath the sun. The threads of his fate all lands enfold. Sigurd was there continually with Rayan, who said to Sigurd that Fafnir lay at Nitaheith and was in the shape of a dragon. He had a fear helm, of which all living creatures were terrified. Rayan made Sigurd the sword, which was called Gram. It was so sharp that when he thrust it down into the Rhine and let a strand of wool drift against it with the stream, It cleft the strand asunder as if it were water. With this sword, Sigurd cleft asunder Regin's anvil. After Regin egged Sigurd on to slay Fafnir, but he said, "Loud will the sons of Hunding laugh when low did Elimi lay in death. If the hero sooner seeks the red rings to find than his father's vengeance." So this is an interesting point that they talk about, that I think a lot of you guys are familiar with, a magical sigil called the Augushelmer, or the Helm of Awe. And that's one of the features they're talking about here, is this magically enchanted terror that if you're to look upon Fafnir's face, he wears this helm of awe, and it strikes terror in his foes. And it also, points out that the sisters, like, hey, Regin, if you want your gold from our brother, you best to ask nicely, because he is not one to be trifled with. This serpent at this point is, world renowned for its might, and its it's a deadly and quarrelsome nature. King Hjelprek gave Sigurd a fleet for the avenging of his father. They ran into a great storm and were off a certain headland. A man stood on the mountain and said, "Who yonder rides on Ryvil's steeds, or towering waves, the waters wild? The sail horses all with sweat are dripping, nor can the sea steeds the gale withstand." Regin answered, "When the sea trees here are Sigurd and I, the storm wind drives us on to our death. The waves crash down on the forward deck, and the roller steeds sink. Who seeks our names?" The man spake. "Kneikar I was when Volsung once gladdened the ravens, and battle gave. Call me the man from the mountain now, Fang or Fjolnir. With you will I fare." And they sailed to the land, and the man went on board the ship. The storm subsided, and Sigurd spake. "Kneikar, say, for thou seest the fate that to gods and men is given. What sign is fairest for him who fights, and best for the swinging of swords?" Kneikar spake. Kneikar spake. Kneikar spake. "Many the signs, if men but knew, that are good for the swinging of swords. It is well, methinks, if the warrior meets a raven black on his road." And anyone who is curious about that, that's one of the many names of the Allfather Odin. It's one of the times in the story that he gets himself involved in affairs of the Volsungs, and it's really cool to see this. I don't know, this whole passage of them being, in a storm at sea, him being on the mountain and calling out, them picking him up, and then the seas subsiding, and him letting them know the sign of the raven being, beneficial to them. And I think that the tradition of the raven banner go back to this concept of that fortuitous sign of the raven. Hneikar spake. "Another it is, if thou art come, and art ready forth to fare, to behold on the path before thy house 2 fighters greedy of fame. Third, it is well if a howling wolf thou hearest under the ash, and fortune comes if thy foe thou seest, ere thee the hero beholds. A man shall fight not when he must face the moon's bright sister setting late. Win he shall who well can see, and wedge-like forms his men for the fray. Foul is the sign if thy foot shall stumble, as thou goest forth to fight. Goddesses baneful at both thy sides will that wounds thou shalt get. Combed and washed shall the wise man go, and a meal at mom shall take. For unknown it is where at eve he may be. It is ill thy luck to lose. Sigurd had a great battle with Lengvi, the son of Hunding, and his brothers there. Lengvi fell, and his 2 brothers with him. After the battle, Regin said, now the bloody eagle with biting sword is carved on the back of Sigmund's killer. Few were more fierce in the fight than his son, who reddened the earth and gladdened the ravens. Sigurd went home to Hjalprek's house. Thereupon Regin egged him on to fight with Fafnir. And that is all for tonight. That did not take long, and not having my co-host, it went by kind of quick. One of the things they referenced in the last passage there as a special denouement to completing vengeance was carving the blood eagle into the back of the slain. And that's a thing where a captive is arms tied, splayed out, and the ribs are cut from the spinal column to flare out like the wings of an eagle as the innards fall, and it's a gruesome and agonizing death and a exclamation point on a quest of vengeance. And so that's kind of dramatically laid out there for folks. All right. So it's just me this evening, but I will answer any and all questions you guys might have, and I'm happy to talk about as much stuff as you would like to this evening. So let's see where we are at and what we got. So I'm going to ask for some audience participation on this one if you guys have ideas. Gabe asks, he says, Hale, do you have any book recommendations specifically for children in mind? I have a 3-month-old, and in the coming years, will need some good books. I've got The Northern Path by Dag Rossman on a previous episode's recommendation. I don't have any great kids' books, especially little kids' books, off the top of my head. If folks out there might have a good idea, that would be cool. That's was kind of a thing. My daughter Aubrey is 5 now. Trying to figure out good kids books. She's just now getting to where she's starting to understand some of the little bit older kids books. As far as little kid books, I don't have great ones that are specifically Asatru or that talk about the lore. There's a number of cool little kid books, but ones that talk about the lore and talk about, our myth cycle for kids, they're hard to come by. Now, one I got that's good for, a little bit older kids, and I actually have it right here because me and Aubrey go through it, is this one, the Delaire's Book of Norse Myths. It's really cool, and it's got big, engaging colored pencil looking drawings. I don't know if that's the actual medium, but it's what it kind of looks like to me. It's got a lot of very dramatic pictures. Aubrey really likes the pictures, and when she likes the pictures, it gets her much more engaged in like what the myth is and what the story is and who the characters are, because she really relates to the pictures. They're cool, they're dramatic, they're not always the best pictures, but they're bright colors and they're interesting and they're compelling. And it's actually, I found that in my high school library. It is not remotely meant for high schoolers, but it was an early thing that I forget what the occasion was, but I had time between classes or whatever else, and I sat there and looked through it, and it was one of the early hooks that got me more curious about our lore. So I recommend that when your child is able to put some things together that way and comprehend some stuff. I don't have a lot of great book recommendations. If really cool ones come in for little kids, cool ones come in, I will let you know if they come in over in the chat.
Read the next thing in the private chat.
I did.
You don't like them?
Cool. So an option from Nick is Thor is My Friend and Where Did I Come From by Jim Cummings. So you may want to check those out if you like those. Our next question is from Scott. I wish to speak upon a subject, male bonding. Men bond differently than women. If I personally don't have a man or two to smoke and spit and swear with and bust balls occasionally, I truly feel alone. The AFA is a wonderful church, but can it possibly see the wisdom in this? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There is. So I'm trying to take this question as broad as possible. With the person who asked it, I know a little bit deeper of where they're trying to get on it, but I want to make it broad for the audience.
Just continue it a couple posts down. I accidentally skipped it.
Oh, okay. So I guess there's more to it. Providing a vital or a virtual place where men can be men, as it were. Not posting nudie pics of women, but a place where freedom of speech is not stifled by rules and proper church behavior. So the AFA has that. We have a men's group where folks can talk about men things. No, we don't want a group where our guys get together and are overly crass or, there's a lot of opportunities for that. As the AFA, we absolutely have a spot for men to talk about men's issues and men's things in a frank way. But encouraging folks to be dignified in their behavior on AFA sponsored things is really important. No, the AFA doesn't want to sponsor a group where guys can, be crass or be vulgar or do things that, you wouldn't be proud of doing in a church group. That said, I'm not silly and I'm not prudish. I get that. The best thing for that is not a church-sponsored group for guys to do that. It's to make some friends and talk to them online. And then you can have, whatever level of guy talk that you need to have with them in those groups that, are volunteer. The groups that men choose to engage in with people that they choose to engage in with. I get that it's cool to, sit around with guys and tell vulgar jokes and, not have to watch what you say, or I get the idea for that, but that's something you do with groups of friends that you create that want to be there, that want to engage in that kind of discussion with, and that you've built that relationship with. It's a strange thing and an artificial thing to come in with people that your only point of connectivity with them is your membership in our church, and then wanting to jump into to a much, much more guys will be guys locker room situation with people. That works a lot better when you've got people that you know and that you've built that level of closeness with, where you feel comfortable having those kind of conversations with. And not every guy is going to be comfortable with that or going to like to converse that way. That's not, that's not a requirement to be a man, is to be crass or to be vulgar. But, again, I'm not silly. I've got my guys that on the side, I'll, text off color things to, and do that plenty. I think that we all do. But I think the value of that, you can make those friends in the AFA men's group and then have those conversations on the side. Anything that the AFA has, complete freedom of speech is a misnomer. We like to have, we like to have people express themselves freely as a general sense. And there's bounds of what's appropriate. There's bounds of what's appropriate. There's bounds of when something becomes just rude and crass and insulting. There's things that are detrimental to the group. And while you have a certain amount of freedom to do those things in a place of your choosing, if it's under the auspices of the AFA, then we have an obligation to kind of keep the peace and make it an environment to where people are not forced to be at the whim of, people choosing to be antisocial in social settings. That's really broad. I can answer any specifics on stuff. But yeah, freedom of speech is really important. But within AFA sponsored stuff, there's a way you act within the group and there's a way you don't act within the group. And I think that's kind of the responsibility of the group that's hosting wherever you're having your discussion. What else we got going on? Trent asks, Allsherjargoði, what advice would you give our young men who want to improve themselves but feel overwhelmed by the modern world? Best advice that I would give in that kind of a scenario is with whatever you decide to do, and it's going to be different depending upon what you do, don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed by the end result that you want to achieve. Take things one step at a time. That can be really hard because we are in you mentioned the modern world. In the modern world, we have a lot of access to instant gratification to lots of things. We, with our phone at a moment's notice, get an answer to any question we want, get directions, we can order whatever food we want and pick it up. We can use DoorDash and they'll deliver it. You've got all these things to where results come very, very quickly. But on the bigger life things, results sometimes don't come that quickly. And especially when you have the perception that it does come that quickly for other people, it's very hard to put in the work for a goal that seems distant. It really is true, and I understand this, and this would not be soothing to me 20 years ago, but it is something that I've learned is true. Developing habits and being consistent in those habits, more often than not, that's what gets you where you're trying to go, and that's what wins you victory in your life. There's a follow-up question by Nick, and I think this is going to address and cover some of it. When our young men, especially, again, our young men, young heterosexual white men get so much messaging in the world today that they're unwanted, or that all of the things they can't do, or, you know, all of the places that they're toxic, or all of the ways that they feel unwanted. And I absolutely get that. But it's really easy when that's the messaging that you're constantly fed to lean into that and to embrace the doom spiraling, doom porn, as it were, to where you're just feeding on bad social media all day about how terrible everything is. That wastes a lot of time where you could be spending it based on what's positive and what victories that are in front of you. If all your focus is on listing all of the things you can't do, it makes it much harder to notice and to see the things that you can do to get closer to what you want. So often we look at the end result of something, and it may seem so far away that it's unattainable, and we give up and don't even try. Most things in life aren't a 0-100 proposition. There's a lot of things that get you so much closer to what you want than you are now. Whether or not you make it to that 100% or not, if that's where you want to go and you get halfway there, it's halfway closer than you are today. There's a lot to be said for that. We often let perfect be the enemy of good, and we don't capitalize on opportunities that we have to make our lives better. And so that's kind of what I would say, is taking those small steps. Doing things incrementally is how you get most anywhere in your life. We see moments and they stand out because they're the subject of legend and, drama and history, these big moments to where in one really special person's lifetime, they conquer the world. But there's only so many Caesars or Alexanders or Napoleons out there. It is great to dream on that scale. But in the meantime, take advantage of all of those little opportunities you have. And I'm speaking in vagaries because it depends on what you're trying to do. But if you're scrawny and you want to put on some weight and get in better shape, there's nothing you can do that's going to magically make that happen. Even if you took a whole bunch of steroids and other things, without going in there and putting in the effort, or without eating enough, your body is not going to do what you want it to do. The whole idea of weight training is progressive overload, that over time and very consistently over years, you build that physique that you want. If you're overweight and you want to lose weight, it's daunting because you spend years getting fat, and then you're like, man, I want to look like I want to look, and I want to do it in just a couple of months. It doesn't work that way, but it does if you do incrementally. And when I say this, it's not just theoretically. Come up with ways to gauge your incremental progress. So just using the analogy that I made, if you keep a workout log when you work out, you can chart over time. Have you gone up in weight? Have you gone up in reps? Are you lifting more at the given exercise than you did this time last year? You can chart that, and you can see differences. If you chart your body fat percentage and you're trying to lose weight, or you're trying to lose fat rather, you can see if that percentage is going up and down. You can see how you're doing. You can celebrate those small victories. But finding ways to gauge small victories and check in is really, really important. Most of these that I'm saying today are things that individuals can do. But I've talked about this before, and I think I talked about it either last show or 2 shows ago. There was something that was really valuable to me that I read in 9 Doors of Midgard by Edred Thorson. And at the beginning of that curriculum, he has you make, I think, a Ljósstaff and Murkstaff list. Basically your good qualities and your bad qualities, or good things you're bringing to the table and bad things that you have. And over time, you check in with this, maybe monthly. I forget how long he prescribes between check-ins. But over time, and I've kept that list since I first started doing that, um, like 15 years ago now. And over time, it is beneficial to look and see all of the things you've been able to, scratch off the bad list and the things you've been able to add to the good list. And that requires you to be honest with yourself, but coming up with ways to check in is important. The other thing I would say, and this is, me, and I get on here with our law speaker, and he's, a little bit older than I am, and he's fairly resistant to technology. I'm not that guy. I don't mind technology. I'm on my phone a lot. I have to be to do this and to do this well. But it's easy to get wrapped up in that in a way that's distorted. I don't know that all those people are artificial, but you're in a space where everything is democratized, and whoever's got the most time to be the loudest on social media is perceived as having some kind of value. Check in with real people in life. Get friends, even if it's just a few. Our young men finding other young men in the real world that they are able to check in with, measure themselves against, and hold accountable, and have them hold you accountable. Accountability is one of the biggest factors. And it's the reason that people want life coaches. It's the reason that people want, nutritionists, or people want personal trainers. Most people, if they do any effort, can figure out how to get a good diet. They can figure out a good exercise routine. But having somebody you check in with, they're like, hey, how you doing at the gym? Well, I haven't been going. There's something inherent in men of value, to where you don't, that's the last thing you want to do, is admit to your peer that you are not holding up your end. Whatever it is, whatever you guys decide to do, if you guys are going to read stuff, if you guys are going to learn a language, if you guys are going to pursue something in your careers, having somebody that you check in and have to report your progress or lack thereof to you forces you to get out of the cycle of justifying things and doing mental gymnastics, and to speak it into the world to another person and see their reaction to your failure or your success. Accountability is really important. Chunking things into small, attainable things that you can measure is really important. And avoiding the tendency to spiral, to doom spiral, is really important. So that's what I would say. And to Nick's question about victory and what victory looks like, victory looks real different to a lot of people depending on where you're deficient or what you're trying to do with your life. But we need to never lose sight of the big victories, but we also need to celebrate and appreciate each of our small victories. Victory is usually not a one big bite victory. It is most often a series of small bites that gets you ever closer to your goal. And I truly believe this, and this can be applied to a lot of different stuff, but if you gear yourself right, be in position to capitalize on that big, lightning, once in a lifetime circumstance victory. Absolutely. You don't ever want that to pass you by if the opportunity is there. But in the meantime, do all of those things to secure all of those small victories. You build it brick by brick with those small victories. Again, that doesn't cost you the big victory. But if you bet wrong and the big victory doesn't come, you miss out on everything if you don't seize those small victories. And if you're busy stacking bricks of small victories, then you are best poised to recognize when the opportunity comes to make a big leap towards victory. You can do both. Do both. The hardest thing is to, and I said this before, the hardest step is from the couch to the front door. Everything else is easier. If all of our young men would go out and make an effort each and every day to win, we would be in such a better place, and we would be so much happier, and we would set such a better example for our children. So do that and encourage other men to do that. What have you unlearned in your path as into and through the priesthood that surprised you? So I don't want to be flip with my answer to this. I actually want to give this some thought because I think it's a really good question. This is when I would throw it to Svan and then capitalize on him having to answer it first to come up with a really good answer. But yeah, so I don't know if this counts as unlearning. Yeah. Forgive me if this isn't the exact answer to the question, but I think this gets us towards it, and I think that it's, I don't know, hopefully useful for somebody. I got a lot better understanding of how people really are and the reality of people. When you're a Gothi and you have to give people counseling, you become, people trust you and let you in. And to be most effective, you need to be able to know as much as possible about the circumstance and about the person that you're helping, about what they actually think and feel, who they actually are, and what they're actually going through. We all in our lives try to put our best foot forward and to show an idealized version of ourselves. To a significant degree, that's a good thing to do, is to present yourself well. You don't advertise your weaknesses. But when I counsel people, to do it effectively, I need them to, tell me how it really is and to open up. And there's a lot of people with a lot of problems. You hear a lot of things as a Gothi that you can't unhear, and you learn all of the dirty secrets that people don't let out in the course of their day. And so you learn a lot of interesting, and I want to say disappointing sometimes, but I don't really mean that in that sense. But you get a much more accurate picture of what people are going through and who they really are. You hear about, people's relationship struggles and the failings that people have romantically with members of the failings people have with members of their family. You really get to see the parts of people that aren't meant for public consumption. And sometimes it recalibrates, the distance between the person they project themselves to be and who they really are, or, whoever they're telling you a story about. But it also, you learn a lot of things. Sometimes you learn positively about all of the stuff this person has gone through, and the fact that you didn't know because they held themselves with a certain amount of dignity, or they held themselves in a way to where you thought they had it all together. So it readjusts, and you unlearn in the sense that you have to readjust your barometer of, what's real and what people are really going through, and what's the real evaluation of people. One thing that I've learned, and again, it cuts both ways. Sometimes you discover villains where you thought you had heroes, and sometimes you discover heroes where you thought you had villains, or you thought you had dullards. Some of the people that I have least expected great things from turn out to be amazing. Some of the people that and I've learned this a lot of the people that look the part, that seem like they are, the best, the best and the brightest, they look like they should be on the recruitment poster. Very often those people are worthless. Those people they're not made of solid things. They don't know anything about loyalty or hard work or dedication. I've heard, some of the scariest, meanest looking, baddest looking dudes turn out to be the biggest cowards. Some of the most unassuming, meek looking guys that you'd never expect it from turn out to be champions for our faith and our folk, and turn out to be rock solid. So I've learned a lot of that. I've learned how to see that a little bit better. I've also learned really deeply how depressed a lot of our folk can be. I've had to counsel people through some really bad things. I've had to counsel people through suicidal situations, or situations where maybe somebody that we all knew and loved took their own life. So I've learned some of that. I've learned, signs of who really believes in the gods and takes this seriously, and who doesn't. And it's not always who you'd think. In counseling, I have, every time I think that, I've got a good grasp on it, and I've seen it all, and I've seen, most of the things I could encounter, you get the most strange and random, odd things that you never in a million years would think you were having to counsel people through, or hear about. And so a wide variety of those things. And that's the thing. So all of those things, and I suppose some of that's unlearning. A lot of it's just readjusting, knowing where our people really are at versus where they say they're at, and getting a better feel for the real soul condition of a large chunk of our folk. It's also kind of interesting, and I'll say this too, I get to see things on a much broader scale. So because our folk span economics and upbringing and geography and age and countless other things, I get a wide perspective on stuff that people are going through. I'm able to counsel people who are, in their 70s and 80s. I can also counsel people who are in their 20s. I counsel people in all different parts of the country, and I've counseled people in different parts of the world. Men, women, veterans, students, healthcare workers, a wide variety of our folk with a wide variety of issues. So I think it's given me a very valuable perspective on better understanding people. But I think that was a really good question. So, all right. A question I would like to ask: if heathenistic behavior, tribalism, primalism and modern primitives have a place in modern Asatru? I don't know what all of that means, because I think they mean different things to different people. There is a wide spectrum of stuff you can do if you want, and it's not disqualifying. I don't know if that means it has a place in modern Asatru. So if you want to do primal, primitive things, it's hard to, those words mean different things to different people. They sound like a variety of primitivism things, and as it's broad, and I'm trying to be artful on it, I want to keep it real on stuff. As a broad term, no, I think that sounds like ooga booga stuff, in a sense of, there being time and a place for you to want to get out in the woods and get back to nature, or to test yourself against the elements, or to something like that. I think there is absolutely a place for that. If you as a hobby want to do caveman stuff, or flint knap, which some people do, or do a variety of, if it's just fun for you to go run around in the woods in a loincloth or whatever, you do you. I don't think that's disqualifying. But no, I don't think it has a particular, again, when you ask that, no, I don't think that's something that modern Asatru needs to encompass. But if that's something you want to do on your own time, I don't think that's a horrible thing to do. It just isn't really related to Asatru. Now, I say that there's been people that want to do like primitive weapons hunting, or those kind of things, and I think that's appropriate. I think there is a place for something like that. And I do think there's a place for some, getting out in the woods, male bonding over, going through struggle and going through some kind of ordeal. I think there's place for that. I think those things as lifestyle choices, though, no, not so much. Next question. If you could speak privately to your 20-year-old self at the beginning of your spiritual path, what would you warn or encourage him about? So again, with the deep questions, I think that's a really good question too. And it's something that I've kind of thought about, but it always, there's a number of things. If you get burdened by negativity over a long period of time, I wouldn't want to go back and crush my youthful optimism with reality checks on things. What I would strongly do is tell the 20-year-old version of me to trust that people have reasons for doing things the way they do. And when I look at something and it's not like the cool idea I have in my head, to stop and consider why, and maybe ask before I assume. I think that's one of the things, is we get young and we get, everybody knows, we know it all. And I think all of us have gone through that to one degree or another, but you get involved in something at a young age, and you know the right way to do it. And what is with these idiots? Why are they not doing it this way? This is clearly the right way things were supposed to be done. Often when you get closer and you see the inner workings, you realize why those things aren't done. Maybe those things have been tried and didn't work. Maybe those things require resources that are much harder to attain than you might think they are. Maybe the folks that you think would be all about chipping in and helping out with something, maybe they're not. So I think that I would teach that to myself, the idea of respecting your elders. And if something's not done the way you think it ought to be done, ask those that you think are doing it wrong, ask them why. Ask questions. Always ask questions. I tell that to my 20-year-old self. I would tell that to I'm literally telling that to all of you right now. Ask questions. If you wonder why something is the way it is, be intellectually curious and ask. More importantly, you don't have any right to be grumpy about it if you don't ask and figure out why things are the way they are. And so I think I would try to encourage myself to be slower to make big, condemnations of people and things, and quicker to learn the why things are the way they are. Yeah, it's hard. Like I said, I wouldn't want to share all the baggage of, 20 years and put that all on a 20-year younger version of myself's shoulders. But I would advise them to do that. That's, I think, the biggest thing, honestly. I'm looking back on it, and there's stuff that, a lot of it led here in a very organic way that I appreciate. And I think that's the biggest one that I would do. There have been a lot of people that I trusted that let me down in really big ways in my spiritual journey to where I am now. But I don't think I would dissuade the younger version of me from having those same experiences, because I think I got a lot out of them. I think I learned a lot out of them. And if I were that jaded or overcautious, I would have missed out on a lot of things. So I think some of my open-hearted trust that I put in some people that weren't worthy of it, I think that also gave me a great boon in that openness. I learned a lot, and I made a lot of relationships I wouldn't have made otherwise. So I probably would keep that in there and not try to advise against it. What tension exists between tradition and modernity in Asatru, and how do you personally reconcile it? Not sure whether we're talking about. Okay, so, and I don't reconcile it because I have always felt this way. We are a real religion. As such, we can't LARP things. So holding on to traditional things that are traditional is really cool, but it's always been fundamental to know why those traditions exist and why we're doing them. If we're doing something within the AFA as a tradition because it's cool and it's something we've always done, and it ties us together with the fluid practice of our faith, great. But being stuck in it, if we learn a better way and not wanting to do it right, and this is, I think, the fundamental key. This is where the tension comes in. When we learn and we grow and we learn that a tradition is wrong and we should do something different, dealing with the old heads that have always done it this way and don't want to change, that is a problem. And I think that's a problem for all of us. We should want to do things right, and we should know that we are not perfect. We should always strive towards perfection. And that means we're going to have to evolve things we do to get closer and closer to right. And I think that's really, really important. I've always thought that was important, but that's where we run into. And I think that's what separates, and maybe this is not fair. We all have sentimentality, and I can understand when we all want to continue to do traditions that we're used to, that are comfortable, that are fun, or that, are our comfort zone. That's not wrong in and of itself. but it's always valuable to check in and say, what's the right thing to do? What would the gods want us to do? Both of those things are more important than what's comfortable to do or what we're used to doing. So refreshing our priorities on what's right and why we do the things we do is really important. Thank you, baby. All right, that's enough. Go see mama. That's really important. So I would say that there's a big tension between people who are comfortable doing stuff, and then also you have, if you've been doing something wrong for 20 years, it's really uncomfortable to switch it up and admit that and change course. We all have a sunk cost thing where if we've been doing something wrong for a long time, we don't want to change what we do. It takes courage and it takes resolution to be able to do that. And I say that when something's wrong. More often than not, the vast majority of the time, it's not that something's wrong. It's just that something can be done better. And so you have to alter a tradition. Most often, you don't have to abandon it. You just have to tweak it to make it better or to get closer to, where it ought to be. There's a certain humility that we all should have, knowing that we're not perfect and that getting it right is much more important than continuing something that makes us comfortable. Battling against the entropy of staying in your comfort zone is one of the biggest. Okay, so on stuff that I've learned while doing this, that's one of the biggest ones that I've seen. Getting outside of your comfort zone is scary, and that may look like really different things to really different people. If you are not very socially adept and you're a nerd, or you're not popular, or you're not outgoing, or you're one of those kind of people, going out and interacting with groups of people and being outgoing is terrifying. That may not seem like a big deal at all to people who it comes natural for. But if you don't have that and you don't develop that in, your school period, your like high school age, every year that goes by, it's exponentially harder to go talk to girls. It's exponentially harder to go like make a friend and like do that. I'm amazed that Aubrey, will go to the park and she can just go, "Hi, you want to be my friend?" Cool. And they click up and they're buddies for the next 2 hours they play at the park. I can't do that as an adult. So if you're not outgoing, that's hard and it can be terrifying. I've seen the idea of, not knowing what Asatru is and who you'll meet at an AFA event or at an Asatru moot. That's scary. And I get that people oftentimes always have an excuse or a reason that they don't go and make the effort because it's scary and it could be disappointing. They don't want to face that. So that's terrifying for some people. Getting out of the house, the thing about the first step from the couch to the door is the biggest deal. I've seen other people that are, that have defined themselves in their life by being counterculture or by being skinheads or by being, maybe they're ex-cons, and they're guys that a lot of, other groups of people would be intimidated by and think are, these scary, badass dudes. I'm always surprised. Sometimes it's very scary for them to meet a group and interact with a group of people that don't come from that background, that haven't lived a rough life, that haven't shared those life experiences, that aren't rough around the edges, that aren't covered in tattoos or whatever the situation is. As much as, it's intimidating for people who've never been around that to be around those folks, it's very intimidating for those folks to be around normal people and not feel like they're going to mess it up, not feel like they're going to say the wrong thing and everybody look at them like they have, 4 heads. We all face different things that are our comfort zone that it's scary to get out of. Maybe we've been practicing Asatru for, 20, 30 years, but we've all been doing it this one way, and now we come to the AFA and they want us to do it different, and that's uncomfortable. Getting in a room of people, maybe you're around, you're new to this, and you're in a peer group of people that studied it a lot and know all the little, can make lore references and know all these things. That's intimidating. It can be scary too. Gets you out of your comfort zone. We are very used to, in the modern world, being very comfortable at all times, and being uncomfortable is terrifying to people. That's how you get victory, though, is forcing yourself into uncomfortable situations and overcoming those challenges. Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is really important. And I would advise all of us, especially young men, to learn how to do that. The AFA has our list of heroes with days of remembrance. Why is it important for us as members to hold these helgemen in esteem? It is extremely important for us to celebrate our heroes. It is so, in the most mundane way, it is noble for us to celebrate the deeds of great people and to acknowledge those deeds and give those people their worth and their recognition. That's the right thing to do. Those people also serve as an example for us to aspire to and learn lessons from their life, and to celebrate that they were real flesh and blood people like we are, with the same fears and hopes and dreams and feelings, and to see the things they were able to do and to aspire to that, and to know that it's attainable if we just have the mettle as men or as women to achieve those things. Metaphysically, that is very important, and we owe them. They did a great, depending on what it was, they did great deeds to get us to where we are for their folk and for their gods. We owe celebrating them and continuing to build and accelerate their fame. Our ancestors, those who have passed, hear us beyond the veil. They see the things we do. And when we celebrate heroes, we continue building their fame beyond the veil. And we continue building their storehouse of spiritual might in the realm they find themselves in. We absolutely believe in the idea of posthumous ascension, that, at any point in the future, souls that are beyond the veil, can get called up to become more than they are, can get brought closer to the halls of the gods, can get elevated to something better. And we help provide them that momentum by celebrating them after their death and by spreading their fame. And that's really important. It is an obligation we have to those who pass in our own family as well, to tell their stories, to speak of them, to keep their names alive, and to, continue reminding and refreshing the well of fame with stories of their deeds and with acclaim for the things that they've done. That is a tremendous gift that we can give to those who've done great things. And it's something that we're obliged to give, and that hopefully, in continuing the cycle, that are, big or small, perhaps one day we are grand enough that we're acknowledged as heroes with days of remembrance. But even if we're not, amongst our family, to be talked about positively, to have people that knew us talk about and celebrate the things that we've accomplished and the lives that we led here in Midgard, and the people that we are. That is something beautiful that we pass on, that we hope those who follow us will do for us, that we owe to the generations that come before us, to celebrate them and to keep their memory alive, and to keep aspiring and using them as a point of worship and celebration for our folk and for our children. What do you think the gods expect of us, if anything at all? Um, that's a funny little linguistic thing because it depends on what you mean with that. Like what they expect we're going to do or what is expected of us kind of mean different stuff. The gods are realistic and they know us and they know where we're at. So I think they have a very realistic expectation of most people are not going to rise to the occasion. Most people are going to be disappointing. I think what the gods expect of us is in what they think we ought to do and want us to do is expect us to be in a state of becoming more noble. Ennoblement of our folk, I think, is important. I think the gods, certainly know where we are in things in the world. They know the challenges we face. They know the state of our soul sickness. They see our souls and they know us. I think that they expect us to take the hand that we are dealt and to play it well. I think they, want to be maximally proud of us. They want us all to be heroes. But I think they expect us to bear the burdens of life nobly and to leave Midgard better than we came into it as people, to have made progress over our lives, to transcend, the level we were at, to become more than we were. I think that's something they expect of us. And I think in a, more practical sense, they expect us to be loyal to them and to be noble and dignified people. They expect us to share and engage in the gift cycle with our folk and with our gods. They expect our troth and our loyalty. And I think that, those of us who come home, that is what they expect once we know. Once you know, you can't unknow. And I think they judge those harshly who turn against that loyalty or who don't show the nobility and the troth to the Aesir that they know they ought to do. So I think those are things that the gods expect of us. I think they expect us to function within a hierarchy and a structure to get things done and not to be selfish. They expect us to put the need of the folk and of the tribe and of our families at the forefront of stuff we do and not be self-obsessed and atomized. They expect us to be a people and look out for the interests of our people. And I think that they expect us to, again, act nobly, and it means different things. But one of the things I think they expect of us that I've seen on the, greatly lacking in today's world is they expect us to be reverent and respectful of our elders and to be pious and respectful of our gods. I think that has become, it's become a fun, like complimentary thing to describe a show or an entertainment thing as irreverent. I think our gods expect us to have reverence. I think they expect those things, but they expect probably much more. What would I want Asatru to look like in 100 years? Not what I think it will look like, but what I hope and want it to look like. Let me contemplate for a second. I want it to, in 100 years, I want everyone to know what it is. I want it to be a, commonly understood thing, and I want what it is to be defined by the Asatru Folk Assembly. I want the Asatru Folk Assembly to be, 130 years old at that point, and to function in a way that is, smooth and well ordered with this. I would like it to maintain all of its core values, but to have a greatly advanced relationship with our gods through 100 additional years of our gift cycle. Like our Gothar to be 100 years, wiser with 100 years greater wealth of experience. I would like in 100 years for there to be at least a Hoff in every state and a Hoff in every country that we have members in. At that point, I would like us to have a much more put together institution with an understanding from people of the outside. At that point, I would like certainly all heterosexual white people to know about the AFA, to know what it is, to have some familiarity with the Allsherjargoði and what goes on. Like right now in the world, people know what Catholics is. People know what Catholicism is. They know that there's the Vatican. They know the Pope. They probably know the Pope's name. They know it's a thing. It has a cultural value that people understand what it is and it exists. And it's cemented in the minds of our people to where it's kind of an eternal thing that's there. I want the Asatru Folk Assembly to be that, to be on that level of understanding at that point, to where it's a brand name thing that everyone understands, and that the values of Asatru are understood not in the hodgepodge that people kind of think they have now, but in a very much firmer and well understood and well digested way. I'd like our practice to increase. At that point, what I would like to also see happen by 100 years is I'd like our folk to be restored. I'd like our folk as a body to be cured of the soul sickness that we've been under, to be able to be openly proud of being white again, to be openly proud of who we are, and to be able to act as a culture and as a race, as a people in a dignified way that enough of us do to where that is what the popular thing is. Most of the people that jump on politically correct bandwagons that demonize our folk over the last, 75 years, they do so because it's popular and the herd does that. Within 100 years, I'd like to see the herd fix it to where, and I think Asatru is a big part of that, to where, if we grow to where we have 1 million or a few million members, we can be openly proud of who we are, and others will take strength for that. If that becomes popular, we'll be in a much better spot because all of those voices will treat it as something to be respected, not something to be reviled. So I think that's really important, and I'd like to see that in 100 years. Where are we at? And I'm sorry for anybody over in the comments. I can't keep track of the questions and answer and follow the chat, so I hope y'all are doing good over there.
Looks like you skipped 2 right above it. Raven Q, what is your most bitter? Should be your next one.
Oh, I did. I don't know how I skipped that, but I did. All right. What is my most bitter won victory? And do you have a story of hardship faced and victory won?
You stumped him, Ryan.
Well, all right. So there's good. I'm trying to think of one that makes for a good story or would make an awesome movie or something. The truth is that they're often much more subtle than that. The ongoing, bitter hardship thing that the AFA faces is our folk are notorious for being disloyal and stabbing each other in the back. There is a thought out there that there's various other, groups of people or governments or races or things that try to keep us down. I'm sure that they do in some ways. But the biggest problem that we have is other white people. And within Asatru, the biggest problem we have is grossly disloyal and selfish people. We are stabbed in the back constantly at every step. And that's part of the forces of chaos and the idea of entropy that we battle. Our folk have a deep soul sickness. And one of the big symptoms of that is we have very self-destructive people that don't think about the future and that turn on us and betray us. We've always had that. And I'm very happy and proud that the AFA has always overcome and withstood that. It is sad. It is very sad. It's heartbreaking to think of how much further along we'd be and how much better everything would be if everybody would have stayed loyal and stayed with us over all the time and if there'd been no betrayals. But there's inevitably betrayal and people that succumb to their weaker self or can't get out of their comfort zone and they implode. When they implode, they take a lot of people with them and form these, little betrayal cycle things. We've had many of them. We continue to have them. What triggers them is when this becomes real. Our people like to theorize about this same concept displays itself a number of different ways, many different times. We all want to talk about how cool it would be if we had nice things. But the second we get nice things, then it's real and then it's scary. So people can use fake names and fake pictures on the internet and talk about whatever extreme position they might have. They can talk about, how great it would be if we had this or if we had that. But when things become real and things happen, a lot of people find out they're really not, quote unquote, about that life. I want to say every Hoff we have has had that kind of little story with it, some bigger than others. In, pretty much 2016 through 2020 or through, 16, 17, 18, and 19, everybody wondered where that second Hoff would be. And they wanted a Hoff so bad. I went to different parts of the country and, everybody's, how do we get a Hoff here? What can we do? We would do anything to have a Hoff here. It would be wonderful if we had a Hoff. And I went to Carolinas. And one of the places I went, we had a kindred there. It was the big, prominent kindred there. And a couple of kindreds, actually. Man, how do we get a kindred? I remember there was one, we were hosting an event there. It was Ostara in the South, and it was in we had rented a camp, and there was some kind of a tent they had outside to have a big gathering of people. And I don't know, it was raining or whatever it was. We're in this tent. And when I say a tent, I mean like a big pavilion tent for an event kind of a thing. And, hey, what do we have to do to get a Hoff here? We will do anything. How do we get a Hoff? So we worked hard. We found stuff. We made things happen. I made moves. I got him a Hoff there. Whole way. No, I will 100%. I will do anything for this Hoff. We will do anything it takes. This is amazing. I've got you 100%. Hey guys, you know that get a Hoff, you're going to have some scrutiny, and you're going to put your name and your face, and in your community, we're going to have a Hoff. And so that's the thing. Are you ready? Absolutely. I've got you, buddy. I'll be there 100%, 100%. Cool. As soon as we put down money on it. So when I said 100%, what I meant was, I know that you want to use my name, but what if we used my middle name and we didn't use my picture? I got to quit. And I'm thinking of one person in particular, but that was, 2 kindreds worth of people, the same people promising and begging and, what can we do and anything, and we just want this. But they don't. When it becomes real and you have to put your name and your face with it, the reality is scary to a lot of people. So that's been the story of most of them. We got the Hoff in Minnesota. Again, we had a whole kindred of people there. They were promised they're gonna stand by us forever. They're AFA loyal. They're the best. They're gonna do this. They're thank you so much for getting us a Hoff. This is amazing. We're gonna make this Hoff shine. It's gonna be wonderful. Didn't even make it to dedication. As soon as we got a Hoff and it got real, it all fell apart because they're not really about it. They just like to talk about it. Over the long haul, it's beneficial that we separate the people who are serious from the people who are not serious. But it's sad. It's sad to see people that can't overcome, like I mentioned, their comfort zone. They can't get out of it. They can't become the people they know they should be because they're too comfortable eking out the existence they have. Meanwhile, complaining about their existence every step of the way. But it's more comfortable to be unhappy with an unhappy and are used to than to do something scary that requires courage. Courage is very, very easy to talk about, but it's very hard to do. But we've overcome every time. We've got the Hoffs. The Hoffs are amazing. The people who we thought were going to be the champions of the Hoff turned tail and ran just about every time. But other people that we didn't know that weren't even on the radar turned out to be champions of the Hoffs and have taken amazing care of them. And we've got, our 5th Hoff on the way here very soon. So we're doing great. The whole story of the AFA is kind of that, hardship to victory thing. But I don't have a really cool one-off, man, there was this one time this guy did this one thing, or at least not one that comes to mind to answer your question a little bit, I don't know, more poetically or in a way that I'd like to. What do you see as the greatest threat to the long-term survival of Asatru? Laziness and indifference. What I have seen, we are in an age where so many of our folk treat life and everything, every aspect of it is disposable. The one thing they won't risk is their job. They'll risk relationships over very little. They will sacrifice their faith or their politics or anything else, but they won't take a day off work. And it shows a lot about people's priorities. So many of our folk have been raised atheist that they don't know how to do religion anymore. And so it's a hard transition for some people. And there's, again, about the comfort zone. When people join, they want to get shuffled into something that's easy, that's already been figured out, that you have a Hoff on every corner. There's 5 Hoffs in every major city. And cool, where's the closest one to me? And I can show up when I want to. It's much harder to put in the work to build Asatru, to grow Asatru, to put in the effort of making all of this work. There's lots of moving pieces. And unfortunately, they're done by a relatively small group of us. So The biggest threat is our people's casual indifference or reluctance to join and be part of something bigger than themselves, and them not stepping up to their potential. But that said, that potential is there, so the opposite's also true. We are able to do amazing things with a very small fraction of our people actually caring and trying to make it work. If all of a sudden all of our people decided, if any of our people, if 10% of our folk decided to join the AFA, become Asatru, and push the ball forward with everything they had, sky's the limit. We're able to do tremendous things with a very small part of the population. How much more if we had double, triple, 10 times? None of those numbers are, outside of the realm of, very recent or very soon possibilities. So if our people decided to step up and all of a sudden they took everything serious, they got out of the sarcasm and atheism and doom spiraling and decided to really engage in this, what we could do is limitless. It is shocking how amazing we're able to do with so few of us putting our shoulder to the wheel. If, just a small percentage of us decided to really put in that effort, it'd be tremendous. There's nothing that could stop us. What is the current plan for Sigerheim and Tiershoff? So current plan as of now, we are going to get as many of us that we can to move to Jackson County, Tennessee. The whole county, anywhere you want to live in there is about 30 minutes from, the farthest other place you'd want to be. So we could all live very, very close together and have very regular community. We could have community there certainly weekly. We could have community there several times a week. We could put down roots and make something very important happen there. And many of us are going to do just that. I'm trying to get leadership families and those who want to get there as soon as we can, and then develop some things on the property. So we've got graveyard improvements we want to do to help beautify and make that, take the best care of that we can. Those are easy to do. We just need people out there to do them. We also would like to build a covered pavilion area to sit together, to eat, to talk about stuff, and have, kind of a seating in a defined area there in a place that's out of the elements. We've talked about doing that, got some plans in the works on that. Depends on time frame, because we need to pay off the property before we work on the great hall that's going to be there. But that property is going to be the capital of the Asatru Folk Assembly. We're going to build a great hall that has, office space in it, as well as a big hall space, as well as a big kitchen, restroom facilities, the other things you'd want out of that to run the AFA from. And I'm looking very forward to that. That's going to be a really cool thing. And it'll be a very good venue to have, our big national gatherings at. Also, but again, we can't do that until we pay off the property. And so we still have a little ways to go to do that. The other thing that's running on a completely separate timetable, after we have Freeshoff, we're going to build Tiershoff. Now, how much of that's our own labor and how much of that we might have to contract out for, we'll see. We'll see who wants to help and who's got the necessary skills at the right time. But Tiershoff will be in the north field of the Sigerheim property. We've got a lot of different plans in the works for what we want to do on that and how we would like it to be. But that's going to come in after Freeshoff. If you have specific questions or want to be part of making that happen, let me know. If you are a member, we can get you involved in those conversations if it's something you want to be involved in. Because I'd like as much, of our own people doing that as we can. Tiershof is going to be our first purpose-built Hof. So that's a really unique opportunity. As opposed to repurposing a former church or a different building, Tiershof is going to be, built from the ground up for us and for the worship of Lord Tier. And I think that'll come faster than people. I think Tiershof will most likely come first, and I think that'll come a lot faster than people realize. But yeah, we've got to get Phrasehof established before we can move to that. But we got some really cool ideas on what we want to build there. Is there a question no one ever asks you, but you wish they would? And what's the answer? Not that I know of. I really can't think of one that I wish people. So I don't have an answer to your question as it is, but I will put this out there. Because we're talking about stuff, if the tone tonight is somber on like letdowns and bitterness that comes with experiencing hardship or whatever, I don't mean for it to be, but it does kind of get some stuff on a theme. So one of the things I mentioned was asking questions and wondering, trying to figure out why things are the way they are. What I wish people would do anytime you're doing something that's right or good or important, if you're doing something impactful, you're going to have critics. The AFA gets critics all the time that have nasty things to say or whatever. What I wish people would do is ask the question that's on their mind before they make decisions about things. We've seen in the past a lot of people that will hear something, they'll hear a rumor, and they'll just react to it. And maybe they'll quit, maybe they'll drift away, maybe it'll be years before we get them back, and it's all over. They didn't just stop and ask. Somebody will have a disagreement about why we do something this way or why don't you do it that way, but then they won't ask. So I think in general, it's just ask questions. I can't promise that you like the answer or agree on the answer, but if you don't ask, you'll never know. And it's really hard. We have, again, our people have a soul sickness, and a part of that is a tendency to assume the worst instead of asking and figuring it out. So I wish more people would, if something strikes them wrong, or if they, don't like something or think we should do something differently than we do it, I wish they would ask why we do it the way we do, or why don't we do it the way they think it should be done. The times that's happened, very often we come to an understanding really quickly in a positive way, and it all makes sense. So I would encourage people, if you get, if something strikes you wrong, take the time and ask. Good evening, Allsherjargoði Matt and producer Nick. Allsherjargoði, what is your favorite lift exercise? Why and how heavy can you lift? Cool. And I didn't acknowledge this earlier, and I will now. Austin donated $10 to Phrasehof and $10 to the Baldershof Steeple. Thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble keeping up with some of the stuff because I don't have my co-host. Favorite lift is deadlift. Deadlift is awesome for a number of reasons. I think fundamentally, if you lock out on it, you can't really cheat. There's a heavy weight that is on the ground, and you either stand up with it or you don't. I think there are a variety of different forms that you can use to do it, with a different grip or a different foot stance or a different whatever. The important thing is the weight was on the ground and you stood up with it. I also think it is a really, really good exercise. I think it is arguably the best exercise. I think a lot of people would go with squat. but I think that there's not a question that it's top two. Works your entire rear chain. It is tremendously valuable, and it's something that doesn't, different machines, different stuff, depending on your body mechanics, are difficult to do, or maybe you don't fit right. But picking up something heavy off the ground is something that we all can figure out a way to get our body doing, and it's really good. How much can I lift on it? I don't know at present. It's been a long time. I lifted 620 one time. That's the heaviest I've lifted. That's been a very long time. I think right now I'm okay. So right now I don't think, I know for a fact. Right now I'm doing sets of 8 with 350 right now, and that's pretty heavy for me. I recommend an over-under grip, and I recommend people not use wrist straps. Do it raw. And grip strength is really important. I know that, likely your back and your hamstrings can lift more than your wrists, than like your grip can hold. So grip tends to give out, but I think that's important. And I think figuring out making your grip stronger is going to help in literally everything you do. So that's a big part of the exercise, and I wouldn't want you to cheat yourself out of the grip strength. Question from unknown. I need assistance. Do I get what?
He's talking about guns, Glocks specifically.
Oh, I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. I didn't see part of the conversation. I apologize. I can't really help you on that. I've got a 19. But it was gifted to me, so I can't really speak intelligently on that. How do we honor our dead animal companions that we loved deeply? I think there's probably a lot of ways you can do that. So this, I don't mean for this to sound, I don't know. For people who do not have this experience, it may sound bad. I don't mean it that way. It's always been really important to me to be the one to end my animals, to put my animals to sleep if that's where they're at in their life, and they don't just go easy and naturally, and it's time to put them down. That's always something that I've done myself, because I feel like I owe them that, and I wouldn't want to put them in a strange environment and a strange, stressful situation to do that. It's one of the only things that I know about my great-grandfather Harold was that, they had a family dog that I think got rabies or something, and it was important to him to be the one who took care of that. And so I've done that with my animals, because I feel like I owe them that, and I'd rather that be done by a friend than in a sterile situation. I think after they're gone, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff you can do. They're not people, and I think treating them like they're people is not the right way to go. It's a little bit too much, but I think honoring them and remembering them is a nice thing to do. I think, I like cremation and then scattering their ashes, someplace that's important and that's special. One thing that I want to do at Sigerheim is put up, and I saw this at the Sparks Marina. There is a gravel pit that got filled up with water, and the city kept it and has made it a nice, artificial lake in town, and it's cool. But there, a lot of people walk their dogs there, and there's like a piece of fencing set up, like a special decorative piece of fencing where everybody goes and clips like the little tags, the little dog tags or cat tags or whatever that go on a collar. They put those there, and that's a really kind of a nice way to honor them. I think that's a neat thing. I'd like to put up, a chunk of that fence there at Sigerheim so people can scatter the ashes of their pets there and, remember them with a little, dog tag on the fence. But yeah, there's something to that. And I do think that, something of our pets does live on beyond the veil. A number of people have had experiences with, ghostly pets. That's not an unknown thing. And I think there's something to that too. What's a good martial art for a young man with no prior experience? Something that builds real toughness, teaches discipline, and makes him more capable. Almost any. This is the trouble when you start talking about martial arts. Their martial art is the best martial art, and everybody else's martial art is stupid. I've seen that. I've seen that at the dojo I train at. That is a very common thing, and it's really cool to take pride in your school, in your dojo, in your martial art. Do that. That's awesome. But the truth is, in general, and I say there's exceptions to every rule, but martial arts will do all of those things. They will teach discipline. They will help you be more capable at achieving something. They will help you build self-confidence. They will help you get your mind into an athletic and a martial way of thinking and way of acting, to where you're in that headspace and you contemplate those kind of situations and those kind of tactics, which I think is really important for men to do. Any martial art, if you apply yourself to it seriously, I think positions you better in a physical confrontation than someone who doesn't have that training. I'll also say, and this is, I don't mean this to be fluffy. This is really true, and I've seen it in my own life and know it to be true. The more you have self-confidence about your abilities in a physical confrontation, the less likely you are to have a physical confrontation. I don't know, that doesn't, work with everybody. If somebody's coming at you and they're on PCP or whatever, whatever you're doing has very little to do with what they're doing. But I learned when I started bouncing, and I didn't know what I was capable of, and I didn't know if I would win, and I didn't know what was going to happen. That lack of self-confidence, that lack of knowing, and that, instinctively we smell fear. I was getting in fights all the time. When I was getting done with bouncing, and I'd done that for a long time, and I felt comfortable, and I felt, again, not invincible, but I felt like I knew what I could do, and I knew the situation, and I was comfortable if it got to a physical altercation. I was almost never in a fight at that point, because people can kind of smell that on you. So I think martial arts helps with that a lot. I'm going to put out a plug, because I am a first degree black belt in Danzanryu Jiu-Jitsu. It is Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. You should absolutely take up the art of Danzanryu Jiu-Jitsu. That is what I recommend. That is the best martial art ever, and all the other martial arts stay. No, but it is a really cool one, and it's one I was really happy that I learned. I say learned, that I'm learning and participating in.
I was actually going to ask as a follow up,
Sure.
why did you get into Danzenru Japanese Jiu Jitsu? Did you research it, or did it just happen to be the local dojo?
Yes. So a matrix of things. I have never been an awesome striker. That's just not the body mechanics of that, just haven't been something that I did a lot. And in my work bouncing, strikes aren't always the most effective, and you get in a lot of, you get in more trouble. You have a lot more liability with that. And at least at my level of competency, it wasn't like you get a lot of bang for your buck most of the time. It was funny. We were on camera, and when I was bouncing, if I ever had to swing on anybody, man, 9 times out of 10, it would be laughable. It's just me like extending my arm at them. It's funny, and people laugh at me. That 10th one was amazing. I'll tell you what, that 10th one was spectacular, but the other 9 were hilarious. So I wasn't ever great that way, but what I was good at through bouncing was using my weight, was grabbing and then doing something, and that worked well. And I'd found myself in spots where I didn't want to be on the ground all the time. I bounced at one place where I had 13 guys on my team, so I could afford to be on the ground in that spot. But I had other places I bounced where I was the only guy, and I can't afford to be on the ground when I don't know the circumstance. I don't know who's coming up. I don't know if this guy's got friends. I don't want to be in that spot all the time. So I wanted something versatile to where I could do things on the ground if necessary, but to where I was doing throws. I wanted something where I was doing throws to where I'm standing up and I'm putting the other guy on the ground. So I looked around here and jiu-jitsu was big. Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which has taken over and almost become synonymous. That's why I need to say Japanese jiu-jitsu. Saying Japanese jiu-jitsu at one time was like a redundant thing to say. But Japanese style jiu-jitsu incorporates, so Brazilian jiu-jitsu took from the same school of techniques and just focused in very heavily on all the ground techniques. A lot of those are very similar or are used in Japanese jiu-jitsu, but they were developed more and focused on in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. But Japanese jiu-jitsu, you have throws, you have various self-defense techniques and escapes and wrist locks, joint locks, arm locks, holds that you do from standing as well as on the ground. But you also have throws. You have trips and sweeps, but you have like throws too. So I looked around for Japanese jiu-jitsu schools or for judo. And this one, I just happened to find this dojo in like a really sketchy part of town. But it was like a co-op that's, donation based. So it's free. It's not like you're signing up for, a very expensive thing, but you can donate if you want. And so I decided to go check it out. It looked sketchy and it seemed sketchy, but I went home. I had a good experience. I went home and I looked up, the guy in the school and stuff. Very legitimate, very good credentials, some amazing martial artists trained there. This just happened to be their humble beginnings flagship dojo, which is really cool. So I looked, and I say that there's other Danzenru schools, but the Bushido-kan is what I'm part of out here. And yeah, turns out very legit. I've learned from some really, really good people that go on and teach at much fancier and more expensive dojos. But I learned a lot. I've had a really good time doing it. It's been a very good experience. I wish I would have started doing it earlier in life. But yeah, I think it's really cool. I would love to have, to encourage you guys to do that. But literally any martial art is going to be a lot better than no martial art. I think all of them have really good pluses and minuses to them. what I do think is kind of important for a practical thing is you get something that's well-rounded, that has a variety of different techniques for different scenarios, and that it incorporate grappling. And I don't just mean on the ground. I mean, from standing, your ability to manipulate another person by grabbing or them grabbing you and you responding to it. Strikes look bad when you're trying to defend them in court. You are much better served often with being able to physically subdue somebody through using your body weight, through throws, through joint locks and grabbing and holds. You're in a better spot and you have less room for something to go wrong and for you to end up getting in trouble. And that is something, unfortunately, we have to think about in the world we live in. Were there any AFA members in Central and Eastern Europe? I'm moving to Prague, Czech Republic this fall, wondering if there is anyone around there. So that's awesome. Congratulations. I want to go there really bad one day. I've heard it is absolutely beautiful and one of the most amazing places to go visit in Europe. And I've never been there. So I'm very envious. That sounds like an awesome adventure for you. Congratulations. We do. We've got a couple of Russian members now. I wish that I could tell you we had like a deep roster over in Eastern Europe. We don't, but we do have two members in Russia that I would, encourage you to connect with. No, I lied. We got three members in Russia. They're kind of spread out across the very, western edges of Russia. So those are going to be your closest bet over there. But
actually, looking at a map with Czechia, he's actually closer to Italy and Denmark members.
No, yeah, he is.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is slightly. Still, hang out with the Russians. We do have members, as he mentioned, in Denmark and in Italy, but you're kind of in the middle of where we don't have a big membership in Europe. Love to see you fix that. If you can bring some people, spread the word. We would love to have Eastern European members. It's so kind of on a theme we've been covering on tonight's show. We talk about breaking the momentum of, on the couch to the door. And the same is true with developing community. It's a hard sell where there's nothing to then build something. So I talk to folk builders about this all the time. They see an area that's really successful and then it's really depressing to go somewhere and there be nothing. And then you kind of invite people and maybe, somebody shows up once in a while and it takes a while and this and that. But every place we have a lot of people started with 0 people. And it took one person to say, hey, how about we do this? Hey, other people, let's get together. The momentum builds. The 1 becomes 2, the 2 become 3, the 3 become, 5 or 6, and then a momentum happens. So absolutely talk to people. Let them know you're Asatru. If they're Asatru, get them to join up. We can see what we can build there and get happening. But I'm very excited about your move. That's awesome. And you're going to get to see a really cool part of the world that I am envious of. So well done. Good luck on your journey. How do I understand weird and Orlaw in contrast to deterministic fate? So that is a seemingly deep question, and undoubtedly it can be, but I think it is much more simpler. I think it is much simpler than all of that. Um, and I think inherently we know these things. I think that everything about the human condition tells us that deterministic fate isn't that simple. There's not a one for one, oh, this is all predetermined. We exercise free will every moment of every day, and we all know that. What's more, if there is no free will, then life is literally meaningless. Everything that, and our faith is one of heroism. It's a heroic faith, it's a noble faith. You celebrate accomplishment and deeds. We are our deeds. If we don't choose our deeds, then what's the point in that? If you're not choosing to be heroic in the face of the impetus to be cowardly, what's the point? If we're just acting something out that's already predetermined, there is no point. The heroic struggle of life is overcoming situation, overcoming adversity, and doing big things. It's about accomplishment. If you can't take responsibility for your accomplishment, there's really no point, and it's antithetical to the heroic faith of Asatru. But that said, it becomes more confusing. I mentioned that earlier in the show. It's not as simple as a lot of people would like it to be. And I know it's, more appealing and makes a better soundbite, but it's also not true. So there are a lot of forces at play in, you mentioned weird, which is an old English word, or our word, earth, which means fate. And it implies, the well of past actions. Or law, the original law, or the primal layer in the well. I talked earlier today about we get dealt a certain hand, and the challenge in Asatru is how we play the hand that we're dealt, what we do with it. Heroism comes in overcoming obstacle and momentum, and in a way overcoming fate. So the struggle against the current of things is important. That said, the three major Nornir are Earth, Verdandi, and Skuld. And the first, Earth, is, like I said, that well of past action. All of the things leading up to a point that have set boundaries, set limitations, set the course in motion of where you're headed. So you come into this world with a momentum in a certain directionality. Verdandi is the understanding of the current unfolding of things. How is fate, or how is, your life unfolding at present? What forces are at work, and what are those forces compelling you towards? And then Skuld is cognate with the word should. It's, if Earth plus Verdandi equals Skuld, if these things continue the way that they are going, if your past action, if any past action that's bringing you to this point is coupled with your current way that you are handling that momentum, then this is where you should end up, or where you are likely to end up unless you change. But that's why it's useful to know. Now, in some of our stories, we see people unable to escape fate. We see prophecies that, inevitably come true. Those are often on big things, and they're done in, there are certain things that you can't affect. There are certain things that are so overwhelming that your action isn't going to forestall them. There's cosmic events that way. There's a number of things. But in general, every step of your life, every moment of your life is made up of choices that you are making. Now, we all have a predisposition towards certain choices. A lot of that is genetic. A lot of it is environmental. A lot of it is getting in ruts or patterns of behavior. If you see prophecy about that, or you're able to do divination in some way, or you're an insightful person that can recognize those threads of earth that come towards you, the waves of synchronicities and possibilities, then you can make a choice to change how you navigate the flow of your life. Those changes are extremely meaningful, and they're what makes the hero, and they're what defines who you are. You're defined by your deeds, and fundamentally, your deeds are choices that you make. You can't be defined by those things if you do not have any choice in the matter. And there's people that write endless books or can give endless discussion on that, but fundamentally, you absolutely have freedom of choice. That is what makes us noble. We are noble to the degree that we can choose to act rightly and to elevate ourselves. None of that matters if it's all predetermined and we have no say in it. What separates a man who leads from one who simply wants to be in charge? Responsibility and rising to responsibility. I think it's very natural for many people to want to be in charge, to want to have the big seat or wear the big hat or be, at the top of whatever hierarchy there is. Wanting to be the best, wanting to be the top dog at stuff is good. I would never say that's not good. Being ambitious is awesome. But what your question gets at is, do you just want to get all the cool points and get all the attention, or do you want to put in the work that comes with that? Being leading is all about, in my understanding, is all about responsibility and wanting to do those things. Like, you shouldn't want the trophy, you should want to win the race. Yes, that comes with, trophies and prizes, but you want your prize for being the fastest guy, who's working the hardest, who's running the fastest, not because somebody just gives you a trophy for no reason. You should want to win by earning it. You should want to be the best and be acknowledged as the best because you are the best, not because a bunch of people, put you in a spot where they tell you that you're the best. You should actually want to be worthy of that spot. In my experience, and I'm absolutely an ambitious person. I absolutely want to be the top guy. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But every day, I feel the weight of the responsibility of being Allsherjargoði, and I would never want that not to be the case. I would never want to not feel the obligation and the weight of carrying those responsibilities and handling them. It's stressful, but it's supposed to be. If it's not stressful, you don't care and you shouldn't be in that spot. So yeah, to me, leadership is very much about being eager to actually want to do the work of leading, not just to sit on the throne. And I don't begrudge anybody that throne, but if you're going to be there, then be worthy of it. Be worthy of it every single day. Be worthy of it. The two go hand in hand, and I don't know why you'd want the one without the other. This is something in modern Asatru that plagued us early on and still does to a degree in the, unaffiliated crowd out there. Everybody, and this was particularly prevalent in theodism, everybody wants to be the high exalted king of their, backyard kingdom of two guys. But I saw early on, and I had this discussion with friends of mine, they would rather be the king of their backyard kingdom than be, a folk builder in the AFA. And again, that's all about the title and feeling like you're at the top and nobody's above you. Because if it's about the power, and I don't mean power in a self-aggrandizing way. I mean, sure, there can be some of that, but I mean power in the ability to affect change and to make things happen. That's one of the cool things. When people talk about power, we act like wanting power is some kind of bad thing. It's not. If you want to use that power to do good stuff with, to make life better, to help move things forward, to help make good things happen, then that's a wonderful thing. But most of those people, the backyard emperors, you'd have a kindred of like 4 people in the backyard, and each of them would have some ridiculously grand title, and it would be all chiefs and no Indians, and they never got anything done. Early on, when I was just a member up in Alaska, there's a group of people that were, hey, you could be top 3 on this new group we're trying to do. I could be number 3 in the Heathen Folk Revival, it was called. But I'm like, no, guys, how about we join the AFA? They're doing stuff. Well, no. And that was very common at the time. Everybody wanted to start their own thing so they could be the king of their own little kingdom that they set up, instead of being part of a hierarchy to where maybe they weren't the top of, but to where they were moving this forward and building Asatru and making things happen. What good is being a king if you don't have a functioning kingdom that's doing cool kingdom stuff? King of the backyard is lame, and it's all about, ego and not about actually accomplishing anything in the world. So I think leadership is about responsibility, but it's also about wanting to exercise that leadership to accomplish things, or to build and make value and make worth for yourself and whatever you happen to be leading, or the folk you happen to be leading. Are you helping people? Are you making those under you, better? Are you contributing and accomplishing in the world? Or are you just occupying a spot because you don't want anybody else to have it? And I think that all those things are at play in that question.
Let's skip to the last 2 while we have somebody new in the chat talking with us.
Okay. Last 2. I went to your website, curious about what Asatru is about, but it seems to be about mostly what Nazis were about. And this, okay. That's a strange question. I don't know what you see on there that you assume Nazis were about. I don't think anything. I don't think most of the things on our website are the same as the, NSDAP's political platform in 1930s Germany, but I'd answer anything specific. We're certainly about celebrating our folk and worshiping our gods. We're about the worship of the Aesir and the reconnecting our folk, meaning our race, with the gods of our race, and celebrating that. I think that's, I could see similarities there. I think that's probably similar to any group of people that want to build their folk and their folk's connection to divinity. Up until the coming of Christianity, that was literally every nation in the world were a unique group of people with a unique group of gods that they worshiped and celebrated, that were the gods of their folk. Some kind of a universal understanding of we're all the same and we all have the same God. That's a very new and rare concept in the history of religion. And it's, I think it's odd, and I think it's very unnatural. So, no, I don't think that we have the same political aims as, a political movement in 1930s Germany, but we do have a pride in who we are. We do recognize that we are a people, we are a race, and we're proud of who we are and where we come from. And we want to have the connection between our folk and our gods. We want to make our gods proud by making ourselves and our folk the very best we can be, and by shining to the world as examples of nobility, of, embodying those values that we think make a man or a woman noble and elevated. So we want to elevate and make ourselves the very best we can be. And we want to worship our gods and keep the gift cycle going between our people and our gods. And that's what we're about doing. What do you think about other followers of pagan religions that are not focused on white Europeans? If they're focused on their folk, I think that's amazing. I think that, Yoruba is cool. I think Shinto's cool. I think tribal Native American religion is cool. I think any ethnic expression, like any group of people that want to celebrate their folk and connect with their gods and become the very best they can be in a way of worshiping their gods with their own, the greatness of their folk. That's a beautiful and really cool thing. And I'm very supportive of that. It is tragic that Abrahamic faiths have washed away difference and tried to make everyone small in order to have this, this shapeless, colorless mass of people all subservient to, a Jewish God of Jewish people. I would want every group of people, including Jewish people, to have their own gods that they celebrate and are proud of, and to have dignity as people within their religion and their relationship to their gods and to each other. I think we've seen throughout humanity since forever, there is something very beautiful about a group of people who recognize their difference, celebrate who they are, take pride in themselves, and that pride helps them become better and elevate themselves. Having pride in who they are, loving who they see in the mirror, and connecting with the gods of their race, I think is beautiful. And I would encourage that of, anybody that wants to follow their ethnic faith. Now I got to find where I was at.
I'll yell at you if you skip one. Don't worry.
No, you're fine.
I think.
No, I've got it. I got it.
Yep.
I may sort of. I may shift around. on some of these. Um, so on culture, struggle, and legacy, what is worth sacrificing for a future we may never see? I don't. Pettiness, comfort, small-minded, um, selfishness. I'm trying to think about the question, and I think that it, in a more nebulous way, might mean different things to different people, but in a very real way, what I've seen in modern Asatru, it's hard to break free of what we're comfortable doing to accomplish something. There's a lot of people out there who miss the point, and I don't think this is a conscious calculation they make. Some of them it may be, but I think more often than not, they don't look towards legacy. They don't look towards the future. They are not factoring in what they are leaving for their children or their grandchildren. They are just thinking about what is comfortable for them and their friends. There is a legacy of 1980s and 1990s Asatru, to where there's a lot of small groups of backyard kindreds, to where their practice of Asatru is them and 3 or 4 other dudes in their backyard, or best case scenario, maybe 3 other families in their backyards, getting together and practicing their faith very privately, and that dies with them. And then maybe the next generation does the same thing for the course of, again, one generation. They don't build anything. So I think that what holds people back is discomfort. Well, it's awkward to be some of the first people. It's awkward to tell people that you do this religion they've never heard of and don't understand. It's awkward when we live in the world we do today, to where it's sexy for the media to call everybody a racist, or to call you names, or to try to shame you for being proud of who you are. So many people just go along and get along, and they stay quiet, and they don't talk about what they really think, and squander life that way. And life goes by quick. But I think that sacrificing that immediate comfort to build something, everyone who steps forward and says, "Hi, I'm Asatru, I'm a member of the AFA," that makes it that much easier for the next person behind them to do the same. But it takes those first people to make those sacrifices. It takes people feeling a little bit uncomfortable, doing something they've never tried before. It takes getting over yourself and sticking around in a group if you feel slighted, or you feel like somebody's getting attention that you think you should be getting, or you don't like this guy, or you don't like that guy, or you think that this gothi's a jerk, or whatever. Sticking around because you believe in the gods, and because you want to build this to be something for your children and your grandchildren, it takes you getting over petty things that you might be feeling. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but for many people, that's a huge thing, and they can't get over themselves. And I've watched a lot of people not be able to. I've watched other people show tremendous effort being able to withstand anything. And then I've seen people who couldn't get past themselves. They took some time, they went away, they thought about it, they matured, and they came back. So I think, those things, they seem small, they seem like a small sacrifice, but to a lot of us, they're a really big sacrifice. Being able to get past your own sense of self-importance, and being able to, be offended and not burn it all to the ground, it takes a lot for a lot of people. It's harder than a lot of people think. What constitutes legitimate spiritual experience in Asatru? Is personal gnosis, UPG, valid, dangerous, essential, or all three? Yes. Again, I think what everybody wants is the super clean answer. I think that super clean answer doesn't exist. Everybody's UPG is not equal. I think if it is an experience shared by multiple people, that adds to its weight. I think that if it is something that proves to be true over time and experience, it adds weight. I think that if you're hearing testimony from somebody who is normally very even keeled and they tell you something that seems beyond your experience, it's much more likely to be believed and put trust in than if somebody is constantly, every day is a magical adventure about really mundane things. And we got some people that are very fanciful and that are prone to flights of fancy. I don't think it's always dishonesty. I think it's sometimes people tend to have a flair for the dramatic. But somebody who's always dramatic, their next dramatic thing maybe doesn't have the same stock as somebody who's usually very, very sober-minded, but tells you something fantastical. I think that if it proves true over time and experience, and other people experience similar things, then it becomes, gradually verified as a personal gnosis. I think if it happens to a lot of people, it becomes a collective gnosis. And I also think it matters, if it's from a position of authority. Does it come from somebody that has the ability to interpret those things or to express those things in a wise way, or does it come from somebody who doesn't have that experience? I trust, elders and Gothar and experienced people more than the random guy that tells me something fantastic. The other thing is I think it's, things can be in between. Something can be spectacular and not necessarily have the same meaning that a person assigns to it. Sometimes there are, people will experience something that is transcendent, and then they will assign a completely different meaning than, the rest of us would assign to it. So I think you got to be judicious in that as well. But again, those are things that take root over the process of time and, the source being trusted and the things proving true or proving meaningful over the period of time to, multiple people. What does a mature, spiritually literate Asatru look like in a post-industrial globalized age? Okay, so this is important too. I think that you can tell a lot of how serious to take someone by what their life looks like. Are you successful in your life? And I don't just mean financially, but that can factor in as well. I think that you find some dude that looks ridiculous, that seems ridiculous, they're missing something. I think you can take somebody seriously who's successful, who's got, a successful marriage, who has a successful family, who is, doing all right by getting their needs met, who's able to have success in their life and success in their relationships with other people. I think you are not spiritually literate if you talk about what a great, rune magician you are, but you live in squalor and you don't have a girlfriend and you are, single and penniless and whatever else. Your magic's not working. Your magic's not effective. I think that a lot of the seriousness and the spiritual literacy you see is if that person is living a whole life, or if they're, fragmented in all the things that they do. I think the wholeness of their life is the marker of that. And I don't think post-industrial global has to do with it. I think at any point in our people's history, If you've seen somebody whose life is congruent and part of that congruency is their Asatru practice, that speaks volumes on their spiritual literacy. Does the AFA have an emergency contingency plan in place if/when a mass awakening of the folk spontaneously occurs? No, not in like break glass and pull out the plan kind of a way, but it is something that we do discuss. And it's something that we discuss seriously. And this feeds onto an earlier topic tonight too. So, you want to keep doing all the little things right to win the little victories, but you also want to be prepared if and when that big, lightning strikes moment happens to where all of a sudden 100 million of our people awaken and want to come home to Asatru. What do you do? And I think that when you deal with it is very easy for that to become a ludicrous exercise in whatever, because if you talk about millions of people, I don't think you can speculate on that type of thing with any consistency. At that point, there are millions of variables. But we do talk about like, hey, what if the membership doubled tomorrow? Hey, what if something happened and all of a sudden we got, 10,000 members or whatever? We have talked about that quite a bit. So to say there's a plan in place, I think might be a little bit ambitious, but to say we've discussed different scenarios and what that would be like and what we might do in different iterations of it, that is a frequent topic of conversation and something that we have given a lot of thought to, and something that I hope happens. Do you think the average Asatruar is more or less prepared for emergencies/disasters? I know there are some communities that place a huge emphasis on preparedness, and I personally do as well. Yes. Okay. I will say that I do think the average Asatruar is more prepared, but I think in a different way. I think the average Asatruar is just as physically prepared as most people out there. What is true is the average Asatruar may talk a real big game about preparedness or fitness or anything else. I don't think that they're any more prepared or any more fit or any more stocked up than the average person. I think that's something they would like to tell themselves, but I also don't think it's true. But what I do think makes them more prepared is I think the average Asatruar has contemplated preparedness a lot more, has given a lot more, a lot of the people out there in the world that are not practicing Asatru and that are, quote unquote normies, they just float through life. They don't critically think about much. They don't prepare for things. They don't go through the mental exercise of gaming things out because they are, they're NPCs, to use, the kids' term. I think that Asatru are awakened to realities of the world that they live in, and I do think they give thought to it. I don't think in reality there's this huge prepper thing amongst Asatru, though I think that a lot of people would talk like they are. But I do think they've given that thought. I think they game things. I think they frequently, and fantasy is important that way. Going through scenarios in your head, even if they're fanciful, it trains your mind to think critically, and it trains your mind to, think about different options, to think outside the box. So I think there is a mental preparedness there that is at a much higher rate than society at large. Yeah. Matt, what does being Asatru mean to you? it means everything to me. And I don't say that in a blow off the question way. I believe fundamentally that our faith is a holistic faith, and it needs to encompass all parts of your life. It's not to say that I don't ever, do things that aren't overtly Asatru related or screw around or have hobbies or have whatever else, but Asatru is woven into the kind of husband I am, the kind of father I am, the kind of, how I interact with people at the store or at the park or at the gym or literally anywhere, with the son that I am, with all of the relationships and all of the things in my life are done through an Asatru lens. And so I think that literally everything is what it means to me, but I also think what it means to me is a constant awareness that the ancestors and the Aesir are, it's my response, it's my duty to make them proud of me and to behave nobly so that they're proud of me and find me to be worthy of their association. And it's wanting to be worth that every day. So it's a daily awareness that I'm part of a whole, to where my ancestors and my gods and my folk are looking at me and judging me, and I want to be found worthy and I want to make them proud. And so I think that focuses in on, how I act to other people, how I take care of myself or how I don't, what I accomplish. Am I accomplishing things or am I worthless? All of those things, I think, factor in. What advice would you give to an average man who feels directionless, yet knows deep down he's meant for more, to find his way home? I would advise them to join the AFA and get actively involved. Obviously, that's what I'm selling. That's what I'm out here doing. So of course, that's my advice. But one of the really important things about that is, if they feel directionless and they know that there's something more to be involved in, so many of our folk, almost all of our folk, are atomized and they don't have a big effect on other people. They may have a small friend group they're having an effect on. They may have a family, a wife and a couple of kids they can affect. But most people feel very powerless, not being able to be an important piece in a really, really big puzzle. In the AFA, we are small enough at this stage of our development to where individuals can have a huge impact on the development of the Asatru Folk Assembly, of the development of Asatru, and specifically on the life of, hundreds of people. Most individuals don't have the ability to be meaningfully impactful to hundreds of people. But if you're in the AFA and you volunteer and you step up and you become very active, you can make things better for hundreds of people. You can potentially make things better for thousands of people, of your people. That's not an opportunity that you have in most walks of your life, and I would encourage them to do that. That's absolutely what I did, and has brought tremendous direction and meaning to my life. All right, guys. Well, thank you all for your questions. Thank you for being here tonight. I greatly appreciate you. I'm sorry for the mix-up with my co-host not joining us. But I'm glad that I got the evening with you. I hope the reading went all right. I stumbled over a couple of names there. I'm gonna blame some of it on there's a couple of typos in that translation, but I appreciate you guys bearing with me. Look forward to talking to you all next week. Get get squared up, get your plans ready for Sigerbloat at Sigerheim. It's coming up quick, a little bit over a week, and I really hope to see everybody there. If not, I will see you. If so, I guess. Either way, I will see you this time next week, and we will talk with the Ericksons about Phrasehoff and the future. So until next time, hail the Aesir, hail the folk, hail the AFA. Remember, victory never sleeps.